So hi everyone, great to be here today. My name is Rebecca Jackson and I work at Caretta Research. So one of the big things that we do at Caretta Research is we collect a lot of data across the media tech industry and specifically within the sports industry as well. Today what I'm going to specifically be talking to you about is enthralling the sports fan of the future. Now, just a quick note before I get started, this presentation has a lot of graphs within it, a lot of data slides. If it's not sourced, and most of them are not sourced, that's because it's Caretta Research data. Just that disclaimer before we get started. So, to give you a bit of an overview of the three things that I'm going to focus in on today. Firstly, sports viewing is increasingly online. Secondly, the shift online is significantly impacting sports production. And thirdly, while a lot of new tech is being invested in, that is still very much experimental. So expanding into the first one, sports viewing is increasingly online. I'm going to start with an example slide, which is example statistics of viewership of the Super Bowl in the US over time. Now, if we look at the bar chart to start with, what you'll see in the darker green color is viewership on television in the US. Now, as we can see, this has been relatively stable over time. There's been a few drops, but if you look at the 2015 number and the 2023 number, they're almost at the same level, with 2015 just leading slightly. Now, what has changed significantly, however, is the percentage of the TV audience that is now watching and streaming. So you can see that streaming in 2012 was essentially at 0%. It was very, very low, and that has now shot up to over 20% in 2023. So that's just an example of how we already see that viewership is moving online. Now, if we look at a more macro trend view of this, not just one example from the US Super Bowl viewing, what we can see is that is an industry-wide trend right now. You can see that online video revenue has surpassed both TV advertising and pay TV revenue, with both of those dropping and flattening out, while online video revenue has grown and is set to continue to do so. Now, that very much also reflects the viewer trends that we're seeing, which I'm going to get into in a little bit more detail as we go on. What is happening other than online viewing is a significant increase in mobile viewing. Now, I know we've probably all seen this in our own lives, but here's some stats to back it up as well. One way that we can kind of account for increase in mobile viewing is through highlight clips editing and reversioning growth. Now, short-form video essentially is mostly used on social media such as TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. And what we can see is that that has had a significant jump between 2020 and 2021, which most things have. That jump also happens to align with the significant jump of TikTok, very much so. And other than social media, the other reason for this is that younger generations really like to watch content in shorter form. The attention span's not as great. I can speak for myself on that one as well. So having that opportunity and their short form videos is definitely going to continue growing over time. But what does it actually mean? Why does this shift matter online, and how is that actually impacting sports production as a whole? Well, if we begin, the good news is that sports content is still a huge part of the overall content production. In fact, it's the second largest category, making up 20% of all professional production. And what we can see is that it is significantly larger than both movies and episodic, with a 4.6% CAGR growth rate over time, and it's only going to continue growing again there, and only second to live news. Now, not only is there a lot of content, online has also offered another opportunity, which is for niche sports to find their audience. Previously, it may have been a little bit harder to watch things with different production grammar, like high diving or other niche sports, whereas now that is an opportunity that has been presented with online, because you're not having to pay the same amounts that you were previously paying to show things on, a regular TV broadcast. You now have the opportunity to find that area streaming online. And other than the streaming itself, it's also the production tools, which I'll get into, which give you the opportunity to produce things a lot cheaper. Automated cameras are opening that up a lot, as well as cloud live production and other technology, offering that opportunity to produce things at a lot cheaper rate. The amount of content and the fact that it's now going online is altogether something that's significantly driving up tech spend. And what I really want to point out on this graph is, yes, we can see that from 2019 to 2027, we're predicting a 52% total increase. However, what's really important to note is that after the drop in 2020 because of the pandemic, it has just been on an upward tear. It hasn't been slowing down, and we don't think it's going to. And that definitely is something that reflects the viewing trends, because what's been demanded now more than ever is that the audience not only wants different forms of content in terms of shorter form video and different platforms which they can look at it from, they also want interactivity. And interactivity obviously demands a lot of new technology in order to do so, and we just see that growth is continuing on an upward spiral. And so we have some very specific technology which we think is going to be leading kind of on the innovation front within the next 5 years. And those that we see having the highest levels of innovation are generative AI, cloud live production, personalization and gamification through the lens of fan engagement, and then immersive experiences, so XR, AR, and VR. So what I was saying before is, while there is a lot of new technology coming and we do see huge impact within the next 5 years, what we also see is that new tech is very much experimental. I'm going to talk us through those 4 technologies that I showed before, how they're actually being used right now, and their potentials for the future. If we start with generative AI, what we see is that there are definitely use cases within sports, but as of right now, product investment is definitely ahead of the current use cases. If we start looking at the left side of the graph, what you can see is that product investment is really leaning towards those more general purpose tasks like video editing, script writing. But despite product investment leaning towards that, it's not yet actually being deployed for that purpose because there's not an immediate need for that. While on the other side of the graph, what we see is that what generative AI is being deployed for is really complex tasks that would be very hard for a person to do by themselves. So we see that generative AI is being used for things like voice cloning, virtual characters and avatars, and de-aging and face swap. Now, localization is also something that we see big growth coming towards it. As of right now, it has been deployed as capabilities. It just hasn't been deployed on a wide level yet as specific products. But what we see for the future in terms of sport is the fact that, again, we talked about the impact of gaming and gamification. Virtual characters are going to be continuing to play a huge role in that, and that will play within sports as well. De-aging, localization and translation is also going to have a huge impact, specifically for international games that are going to be shown all over the world. And then once it becomes commonly accepted as a use case, video editing is absolutely going to change the landscape in terms of efficiencies and economic savings. But as I said, we're not right there yet because of the fact that it's not immediately needed. If we move over to Cloud Live, I will admit this one is not as experimental as the rest because sports is actually one of the leading users of Cloud Live growth, essentially at the same level as broadcasters and platforms. And the reasons for this is because sports clubs and leagues have a lot of responsibilities and kind of requirements to reduce that economic footprint and also to improve sustainability, which is something that Cloud Live allows for. And other than that, Cloud Live has huge opportunities for the future and is only going to up efficiency as we see it having capabilities such as allowing people to work on the same content all at once, to have it delivered to multiple endpoints. And when that's kind of unlocked at the top level, because right now that part of it is still somewhat experimental, once we reach the finishing line of that, it's going to be absolutely incredibly impactful for that efficiency element. Now, fan engagement is something that I think is specifically very interesting in terms of how it can act as a sales funnel. And I think this is something that's definitely going to be coming more and more in the future as a result of all the tools that are being invested in for that. And we're going to look at specifically how personalization and gamification are smoothing that transition from stats through to that final stage of betting. Now, if we look at this as though you're watching a live match, let's begin with stats and live data. You're watching the game and you're getting on your phone different stats coming up. Now, this is just the top level engagement. It's very passive. You're not having to really concentrate on that. But you're still getting that interaction to begin with. Now, next stage below that is when a poll or a quiz starts popping up. It's who's going to score the next goal, what team's going to have the next corner, and all of a sudden you're getting more invested. You're playing along as well, and you actually care about the outcome because you've started participating. Other than if your team is playing, you probably already care about the outcome, I accept. But other than that, then you move into fantasy sports. Now, fantasy sports is when you truly have begun giving a lot of your personal time, commitment, and investment into this. So all of a sudden, you have a lot of increased knowledge on the game and care a lot more about outcomes as well. Once you've got all this knowledge, what you can do with it is then go into virtual betting. So you're not actually using any of your real money yet, but you have begun doing that virtual betting. And then finally, after you've gained the confidence there, you've made some good decisions with those virtual bets, you can move into sports betting. And that is the bottom of our funnel. Obviously, not everyone's going to go through to the end, but that's how fan engagement and specifically personalization aspects throughout can work as a sales funnel. And finally, if we look at immersive experiences, which we know a lot of investment has been going into, what we see right now is that they do very much remain highly experimental. Now, immersive experiences are gaining traction, and if we look at augmented reality to start with, what we see is that it does definitely increase viewer engagement in that you have different aspects and levels of statistics on top of the game that you're watching. And it maximizes reach because of the fact that it's mobile first, and in today's day and age, everyone practically has a smartphone, so it has a lot of reach and potential. However, it does remain experimental in sports. That being said, because it's been accepted on such a wide level in other places in the market like Google Maps, things like that, it is going to be accepted within sports, we believe. It's just not at that level yet. As we said, next 5 years, we really do see this making an impact. If we look at virtual reality on the other side, it offers a completely immersive experience, and it increases your personal connection to the game as you're really, truly in it. However, it is significantly less accessible because of the fact that you need a headset. And until everyone has a headset, it's not going to take off at the same level because it's just not realistic. Now, I know I've gone through a lot of points today, but just to give you a final overview of what we've talked about. So, firstly, the increase of online sports is presenting opportunities for less mainstream sports and greater interactivity. There's a platform for sports which previously may not have been watched to be shown and to find their audience. Secondly, viewing trends are significantly impacting the investment towards new tech. Online means that people also want that interactivity element on top of it, and the tech needs to be there to support that. And finally, new technology is being invested in, and it is absolutely going to create new exciting ways to connect sports and fans, but a lot of it is still at the test stage, and it has a bit of a way to go before it's making those impacts that we know it can. If you are interested in more data that Caretta Research has produced, we've done a sports rights report, so please feel free to scan away, and I can send that over to you. I'll leave that up there for a second. Thank you very much.